My name is John Papay. I'm an associate professor of education and economics here, and this year I'm serving as the interim chair in the education department. I also run the Center for the Study of Educators at the Annenberg Institute at Brown. I've been at Brown for 10 years now, and my research focuses on two main areas. One is about policies that affect teachers and their work. So things like how do teachers learn and grow and develop over the course of their careers? How do districts staff schools with effective teachers? And I think that has real implications for educational inequality, and how do we think about the equitable distribution of effective teachers across schools? And how can policies influence that? Why do teachers stay in schools and why do teachers leave schools? And how do conditions in schools, the sort of professional environment of schools, how does that affect how successful teachers can be with their students and how they grow and develop over the course of their career? The second big focus is around thinking, I guess, more broadly about educational inequality and how students progress through the K-12 school system into college and then into the workforce, and how their educational experiences and how educational institutions influence their success later in life. And so we've been doing a lot of work looking at sort of the transition from high school into college and how students' experiences in high school set them up for success. Over the past 5 or 6 years, nearly all of my work has been done in partnership with local school districts or state departments of education. And so one study has been with Massachusetts. We have a long-standing partnership with the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And we did a study, I guess, a year and a half ago now, called Lifting All Boats, which was really more of a research report, trying to think about what the past 20 years of education reform in Massachusetts had looked like and what its effects had been on students overall, but in particular around educational inequality. We used a big longitudinal data set to try to track students over time. We had data starting for students who were in the K-12 school system in Massachusetts in the early 2000s, and looking at what happened to them, how they moved through the school system, how they progressed to graduate from high school, go into college, and to go into the labor market. And so we were able to do things like show the relationship between experiences in K-12 schooling and outcomes that we ultimately care about, like how people succeeded in graduating from college and going on to earn living wages in the labor market. One finding that sort of struck or stood out there was, if you compare students who in high school have similar test scores, who attended the same school, we see that low-income students are much less likely than higher-income students to go on and graduate from a four-year college. And part of that seems to be about things that are going on in the school system and how schools are sort of targeting different things to different types of students. And I think that's had real implications for what the state's been doing. It sort of has sparked new conversations around educational inequality in the state. So the other project is we're starting this new partnership called the Research Partnership for Professional Learning, thinking about professional learning for teachers and how can we study professional learning in different ways. So we're partnering with a set of major national professional learning organizations, and so it's kind of a different type of research practice partnership where we're actually working with these nonprofits that are doing a lot of the work in schools. And we're trying to sort of change the conversation here. Most studies of professional learning focus on, like, let's take some program and see whether it works or not, right? Did it work to improve teachers' knowledge or teachers' skills or teachers' effectiveness? We're trying to think, how can we use some of these same approaches to think about why do these things work, right? Are there certain approaches that are more effective than others? So one of the things we've been really focused on recently is how teachers are learning to use high quality instructional materials, right? We know that there are big gaps in teachers' expectations for students, and that teachers, as new curriculum comes in, often don't have high expectations for students and don't think that students can actually handle the work of these new curricular materials. And I think there's good evidence that when teachers sort of have higher expectations, students sort of meet those expectations and thrive. And so we're trying to do a series of studies saying, how can we help support teachers in building their own mindsets about what their students can do so they can tackle this more challenging curriculum. So I teach both undergraduates and students in our urban ed policy master's program, and I think in both cases it's maybe it's not insights from my the substantive insights from research, but the more sort of impact orientation of the research. I really this partnership research have been really trying to think about not addressing questions that I'm sitting here saying, oh, this would be interesting to know about, but thinking about how do we address questions that are of immediate importance and actionable for policymakers and practitioners. In my teaching, I try to have that same orientation towards students. How do we think about taking the skills from the classroom and how will they, when you go out into the real world, how will you take those and use those to have impact? I've been really interested in teachers for a long time. I was a high school history teacher and was really interested in thinking about these, I was sort of reflecting as I was doing that work about how I can get better in my own practice, how the sort of conditions of the schools that I was working in were helping me thrive or were making it harder for me. I guess that sort of is what led me to go. I became very interested in policy, and so I went I went to Harvard and got a doctorate in education policy. And there I began to sort of engage more deeply in some of these questions and thinking really about how policies and structures really did have really important implications for the work that was happening at the school level and for teachers. And so I think I became interested in thinking about these more systemic questions about how can we structure things in better ways and more equitable ways. I came in, as I think many doctoral students do, right? I was a new assistant professor right out of graduate school, and I had a focus. I knew the things that I knew, and I think being here has really. Our department is small, but it's really interdisciplinary. We have a lot of folks from a lot of different perspectives, and I think that's helped me really think about some of these questions in broader ways. I was a history major in college. I taught high school history, and then I went and I did this work on policy, and I was not really thinking as much about some of these historical factors. And so coming into the department and talking with historians, I think has helped me, has helped shape my thinking. Talking with political scientists about some of the policy dimensions of this, right? I was thinking about the impacts of policy, but I've learned a lot about how policies get enacted and thinking about the ways in which these political processes are really important. We're doing a lot of work now in Providence, trying to help provide some research and analysis around the school turnaround effort here. And the politics are messy, and I feel like talking with colleagues has really helped me sort of think about that and figure out ways to engage in that, hopefully more productively.